Has anyone legitimately slapped someone else? Not a play slap, but a good hard 5 fingers across the face? Yes. This guy pickpocketed me in Boston and I felt it and I turned around and slapped him thinking it was my friend just playing with me. Go on. I slapped a friend of mine in junior high. I'm female. He's male. He had asked me out, and I said I just wanted to be friends. A couple of days later, we were hanging out in a group of friends and says he wants to show me something on a piece of paper. I go off to the side of the hallway with him and he opens it up and it says I really like you. I look up, he grabs me face and tries to kiss me. I wrench away and storm off. Absolutely pee. A couple of days go by, he comes up to talk to me. I'm dumb enough to turn towards him, and he freaking does it again. Grabs my face and tries to kiss me. I wrench away, reel back my hand and backhand him as hard as I can across the face. Everyone in the hallway saw it and everyone was silent. Then a couple of people began clapping. His face was swollen for a day or so. I think I caught him in the eye because his eye had a big red spot in it. Shrugs. Our friendship ended there. Slap zoned. My new stepmother and I were discussing sleeping over at a friend's house when she decided to go too far. She implied that just because my mom slept wherever she liked, I wasn't able to do the same. Well, let's be honest. When someone calls your mom a W, they gotta pay the fiddler. Rick James. What did the 5 fingers say to the face? Slap. My stepbrother stepped in because he saw his mom get slapped by his new brother, so he got to ride the pain train too. Throw away. My ex-boyfriend at the time, stole money from me to go buy drugs. I wasn't home at the time but discovered the missing money when I got home and found him gone. I got in my car and drove to where I knew he'd be. Found him on the street with some other dudes, dealers and other addicts, I assume. They scrambled when I got out of the car. I walked straight up to him and slapped him as hard as I could across the face and told him to get in the car. He asked me if that was how our relationship was going to be from now on. I didn't get out of it until a year or 2 later. Still hate him. I hope I never have to go through that. That sounds awful. You're strong for leaving and not looking back. I was drunk and my boyfriend called me a Nazi for whatever reason. I'm blonde with light eyes and speak German and my family is mostly German. So of course I was insulted, but mostly I was really drunk so I got angry and gave him a nice hard slap, and then I cried 4 hours about it. Alcohol. One of my friend has been on and off with this guy for years. He just treats her like crap. So one night we're all out on the town, and I'm tolerating his presence. He then had the audacity to invade my personal space and start drunkenly telling me that I'm beautiful, touching me weirdly, like playing with my long necklace, etc. I got away from him and moved on. Well, then some random dudes come up to ask one of my friends to dance, who politely refuses. It would have ended there, but he thought he was some big man and that he would start coming at them. They get aggravated, and a fight is about to break out. He was starting this whole fight. We were yelling at him to stop. He wasn't listening. I'd had enough. I slapped this kid across the face. It was super satisfying at first, but he was too drunk to care and ignored it. Plus it wasn't a very hard slap. It was sort of with my purse. So now I await an excuse to do it again. While drinking with some people at the university pub, one of the guys was being a bit of a dong to the girls we were with. After a while, he realized this and went up to one of them and asked her to slap him. As a form of redemption, she slapped him a couple of times, after which he claimed that no one could beat her slap. I was watching this and laughing pretty hard, at which point he asked me if I could do better. The girl in question was probably around 110 pounds, while I'm around 240. I said I was pretty sure I could, so he asked me to slap him. I didn't really want to slap the guy in the middle of the pub, so I declined. At first, he asked me again twice, so I agreed. He stood in front of me and waited for the slap with a careless, blank look on his face. I looked at him, made a reference to how I met your mother to the crowd that had gathered, and slapped him across the face. The guy fell to the floor, then got up, put his hand in his mouth and pulled out one of his molars. Needless to say, I felt pretty bad for breaking the guy's tooth, but I felt better soon after when all the girls there thanked me for it. I had just gotten the 7th book in the Harry Potter series, On release day, one of my friends said something like Harry Potter is freaking stupid, so and so dies in this one, blah blah blah. I slapped him right in his W mouth. He was P. A couple times. One of them I regret, the other I don't. One of those times was my best friend, now boyfriend. He was having a lot of problems with depression and forms of self-mutilation. I sat on the couch next to him one day and his knuckles were all bloody. I asked what happened and he said he had punched a brick wall and some trees. I slapped him and told him to never do that again. Interestingly enough, I was having some similar self-mutilation problems about 2-3 months later. He was the only one I confessed to, and he slapped me. Some might think it would be wrong for someone to slap a girl like that, but I needed it, and ever since then, I've never done that to myself again. I see him slapping you as a reminder of where he was just months ago and how you cared enough about him to slap you. In that way, he also cares enough about you to slap you and remind you that you aren't alone. Just the other day I was kissing a boy, I am 16, wearing a bikini because we were swimming, and he pulls that balls where he pulls all the strings to make my bikini fall off. He deserved to be slapped. Respect my body. But it was too late, I'd seen everything. When I was in the Peace Corps in Cameroon, West Africa, I was visiting another volunteer at his village. We'll call him Sam. He and I went out drinking with some of Sam's Cameroonian friends and had a grand old time. When we decided to leave, Sam's two friends offered both of us rides on their respective motorcycles, which we accepted because we were drunk and Sam's house was far away. So Sam gets on one bike and I get on the other, and off we go. On the way back, because I'm a female and Sam's friend is a stereotypical Cameroonian man, he starts hitting on me, which I was used to and knew how to deflect, but this guy just won't let up. The guy is still trying, and saying some rude things now, so I tell him something like you can't talk to me that way, but he persists. Remember that I'm pretty drunk, so my temper's pretty high and I have no patience for bulls. Finally we arrive at Sam's house just after Sam does on the other motorcycle. Just as I get off the motorcycle, the guy says something really awful to me, so I turn around and slap him right across his face, declaring you cannot talk to me that way, Sam. Not knowing anything preceding said slap, freaks out, why did you slap him, what did he say? I turn around and declare I forgot already, but it was very rude. The Cameroonian had nothing to say on the subject. Some time later, after I had gone back to my post, the guy I slapped later told Sam, oh yes, I definitely deserved it, so he clearly wasn't upset about it. But Sam never did forgive me for it, and I still can't remember what he said to me. My siblings and I were left to our own devices as kids. My little bro was kind of psychopathic and would go around beating my little sister with whatever weapon he could find. He'd get away with it, too, because my sister was a tattletale and wuss and my mom wanted to watch her shows. For the record, slapping does work better than punching. When he realized I wouldn't let him get away with whipping our sister bloody, he started destroying her possessions, and made the grave mistake of tearing up my promo Articuno card. Eventually my bro shaped up and to this day respects me, so I guess it all worked out. But yes, a well-aimed slap is far more effective than a professional punch, and I figured that out early on. This will get buried, but here goes nothing. My boyfriend and I are 23 now and have been together since we were 14. While in high school, I remember being at one of the pep rally things and my sir was walking down the bleachers when this kid decided it would be funny to trip him. As my boyfriend fell face first down the rest of the bleachers, I turned around and slapped that mother sucker so hard across the face. I have never hit anyone first in my entire life. No regrets. My ex-husband, shortly after he told me he cheated on me, repeatedly, with my best friend, he came home, after telling me online, and then told me what I had done to make him do it. I slapped him. All through high school I was that awkward overweight chick. I never did anything to pee people off, and stayed out of petty drama as much as I could. At my prom after party, the popular clique decided it would be fun to sneak up behind me and surprise grind me at random intervals during the night. The first time I told the person to leave me alone, it was fairly obvious that it wasn't going to stop because the entire group was watching and laughing their asses off. After it happened a second time, I made the decision that I had enough of their crap. These jerks had treated me like crap for the past 4 years and I was going to take this opportunity to punch one as hard as I could in the freaking face. Shortly after I decided it was going to be a slap to avoid being possibly charged, and it happened. I felt one of the guys come up behind me and start rubbing his crotch against my butt. I turned as I raised my right hand and slapped him as hard as I possibly could. He stopped in shock. The clique stopped laughing in shock. I then said as loud as I could, "Leave me alone. I'm sick of you harassing me and treating me like crap." To my surprise, everyone in the general area, even those who I had little to do with through my high school years, began joining in, telling the group off. They slunk away, and I celebrated my victory by partaking in more vodka. It took 4 years, but I got my respect. Just last night, I was at a Skrillex concert, and as I was leaving the mosh pit, some dumb kid decided to grope my butt. Not like an accidental, just bumped into you and it's crowded thing, but a full handoff butt grab. I spun around and just slapped the guy hard. Then I started lecturing him, which was kind of humorous because I don't speak Italian. I keep going off on this guy, telling him that he's a pervert, and adding in a few more slaps as I go, you know, for punctuation. This is my favorite story simply because you added slaps for punctuation. I've slapped quite a few people. The last one was on Christmas Eve. My friend's GF gets drunk and slaps people. She slapped 2 people and then sat down across from me when I was talking to some people and she slapped me. I did what the first 2 should have done. I've also slapped one of my best friends quite a few times. He always ends up crying. In 7th grade, as was singing the praises of Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, a friend of mine said he wouldn't play it because Castlevania sucks. I have no idea why, but at the time the appropriate course of action seemed to be delivering a nice, fat smack across his face. He was not entirely amused. TL. Dr. Castlevania is serious business round these parts. I haven't slapped anyone but have seen it happen. It was a high school party and there was this creeper there just being really weird with 2 girls that were just talking to each other. I was in another conversation but I didn't see him or anything, but all of a sudden I heard the loudest noise. From the noise you can just tell it was a slap, and as I turned around everyone was just quiet watching this and the kid's face got so red. After a few seconds all the OHHH yells started and that was that. I'm sure this happens all the time but only time I've been there to witness it. TD. LR. Creepy kid gets slapped real hard in the middle of a party. A good friend of mine was upset because he was dumped by his girlfriend at the time. This is not their first time doing this, so my friend asks me to slap some sense into him should he decide to go down that road again. We decide to drown the sorrows in alcohol, with a couple of other people. A small party gets started and the lady in question appears, though why she thought it would be a good idea to come by remains a mystery. Friend starts freaking out, so we step outside for a cigarette. At this point he's almost gibbering at the prospect of going back inside, while being sloppy drunk. I take this as my cue and smack the sense back into him. It was an open palm game changer that should have waited until his cigarette was finished. Admittedly I was a little drunk overzealous at the prospect of slapping the crap out of someone and the slap could be heard through the wall, but it broke him out of his stupor. I could see that he was pee immediately afterwards, but sense quickly returned to him and we just laughed at the sheer ridiculousness of the situation, as well as the imprint I left on his cheek. I can't say that the rest of the night went as smoothly as that, but that's my slap story. So at the start of 6th form I and a female friend were acting as our teachers. When the script called for her to slap me, she made a pathetic "I don't want to hurt you" attempt in the rehearsals, the kind that feels like a mouse fart caressing your face. But just before it was the slap scene I said just go for it, make it a good one. She kind of caught me off guard when she, 5'4", slapped all 6 feet 5 inches of me across the stage. I was taken off the ground. My glasses flew off and hit the teacher I was portraying in the face. There was a stunned silence, and then a massive cheer, even though I had red welts across my face for the rest of the play, and indeed, the rest of the week. We felt like we'd achieved something. TL. Dr. Be slapped across a stage mid-performance. Yep. Freshman year of high school, I mentioned something about the electoral collage, and a friend of mine, who strongly opposes the current system, gave me all 5 fingers. full force. I did not know how to respond. This many comments, this will get buried. I was in high school and I am a larger individual, was a lineman on the football team and powerlifter. Another lineman and myself were having problems with each other. Something ridiculous, like he had switched off my workout group or something of that nature. Cue up the post-football party and the heavy drinking. Now we are large individuals, we are gruff, mean looking people, and we are drunk. As mean as a flippin' high school kid can be. He spouts off something stupid that really got me going. And like the little punk that I was, I started the chest bumping ridiculousness. That is when he reached back and just slapped this crap out of me. I was stunned. But not for long. Once I realized what he had done, I slapped him back. This is where it got weird. Normally this would have started a fist fight and we would have both been on the ground ripping each other apart. This is how big drunk boys from the country do things. Well, it did not happen that way. After I slapped him, he slapped me back. I was so pissed off I couldn't think of anything else to do, so I slapped him back. I can only guess what was going through this mind at this point, because he was visibly pissed off as well, and he shook his head and slapped me again. So for the next 10 minutes or so we stood there, in silence, slapping the living heck out of each other in turns. Eventually we looked at each other, bright-checked, bloody-nosed, broken-lipped, and started laughing. It was bizarre and we could not understand what had just happened. After that we grabbed a beer and went and sat on the tailgate and got drunk together. Threw the whole party for a loop because people apparently had been staring at us. My butthole boyfriend at the time decided it would be funny to splash me with his cup of beer. I slapped his face right off his face. In 7th grade some guy asked me to a dance, and I said no. He proceeded to call me a kike. I didn't slap him immediately, but I did later that day or week. I don't remember. I'm not a violent person, so I actually don't know why I did it. Middle schoolers are stupid, I guess. Yup, I was 10 and at summer camp, a guy I kinda had a crush on had asked my best friend to the end of camp dance. I don't remember what we were talking about, but it ended with me saying jokingly, "If you hurt my friend," and then I slapped him. I apologized profusely because I didn't actually mean to it. I had every intention of stopping before I made contact with his face and I just didn't. To this day I can't tell you why I didn't stop. I've slapped 2 people, both in high school. One unhooked my bra on the bus and the other was being an insufferable bully for weeks. He spit a bottle cap at me, so I picked it up, dropped it in his lap, and then slapped him with his own spit on my hand. 2 years ago, I won a slap bet. I will never forget the feeling of satisfaction got when I connected with my friend's face right in the sweet spot. I did when my friend asked out a girl he knew I liked. She said no anyways, so it didn't matter. He had a red mark on his face for a few hours. In high school I got out of a fight with an eminently taller, bigger black man by slapping him across the face and calling him a chillin'. I expected things to go much worse. Yep, for relentlessly flirting with my BF. I should probably have been mad at him for pandering to it. I felt pretty bad afterwards. My son's father, now my ex, decided to confess that he cheated on me while I was driving us to the store to get diapers. I literally slammed on brakes in mid-traffic and slapped him so hard that his face left a partial print on the passenger side window. I wish I could find the old pictures, but I didn't wash that window for weeks. Every time he got in the seat he would see the partial print and rub his face. My BF accused me of attempting to cheat on him with an ex of mine that I hadn't seen in over 4 years. It was the most absurd thing I've ever been accused of. I slapped him before I even knew what I was doing. Got slapped once, and it's a complex but, I think, good story. LARPing, Vampire the Masquerade. I was playing the part of an old, slightly senile, very quick-tempered elder. A new girl joined the game and was cast as my grandchild in darkness. My part was to be semi-mean to her, to further the plot, but the most important aspect of my character was his obsessive need to keep the city safe. Safe from werewolves, mages, hunters, etc. Anything unusual that might attract attention was slammed down hard, and anyone who did something unusual could expect a serious beatdown and humiliation from Elder Psycho Man. TM. So, new girl. Her story is she was made a vampire while pregnant. Yes, a vampire blade. A human with vampire powers. When my character heard about this being possible, my character arranged for a necromancer to summon something to kill the semi-living child in her womb. He was not going to allow such an abomination come to life. See where this is going? So in game she gets told that she had a spontaneous abortion. My char paid his price, but no one in game knew what happened. So when the story arc was over we were discussing things and I mentioned what happened, explained what, why, who, etc to several people including new girl. She slapped me in front of a room of people who were listening to the story because I killed her child. I stunned me. I recall it 19 years later like it was last night. I looked at the floor and then up at her. The room was silent. When I looked at her, her face was flushed red and her eyes wide. In my mind I was thinking 1. It's a freaking game. 2. Your child was a threat. And Cass, my char, had zero tolerance for such things. It was entirely within that character's worldview to do what I did. The storytellers loved it. Very fricked up, but totally motivated by in-game needs. We stopped being friends after that. I am, on reflection, still angry and insulted. Dang. I volunteered at a hospital in high school and was in the volunteers area, where we would wait around and make packets when we had nothing else to do. Talking with a guy about my age when he started making really inappropriate comments. I told him to quit it and made some sort of remark about wanting to slap him for it. He said go ahead and I balked. Then he went off on a tangent about how he hated women because they never followed through and if I had the balls, I'd go ahead and slap him. And not just some sissy slap. I looked over at the adult who was supervising us, who winked at me and then covered his eyes. So I slapped the dude. He bled a little bit. My mom slapped me hard and threw cold coffee in my face when I wanted to sleep in the same room as my female cousin from my dad's side. We grew up together and we see each other as brother and sister, but I understood her concern because we were 13 and 15 respectively. Fast forward 8 years, and my younger brother has had sex, multiple times, with my other female cousin, from my mom's side. I caught them in the act and by reading their chats, which my brother stupidly left open, and told my mom, who brushed it under the table because she didn't want to cause any family distress. My brother was 12, and my cousin was 17. I was extremely angry at my mother for brushing it under the table, and she said that she would handle it. She had a talk with my female cousin, except they didn't listen and they continued to have sex. I had to take measures into my own hands. This was nearly statutory rape, although people don't like to think so because the 12-year-old is a boy and the 17-year-old is a girl. I sent transcripts of their conversation, indicating that they were cousins, and the age difference to all of her friends on Facebook as well as her school teachers and principals. I told her if she continued to speak to my brother, I would send them to the colleges to which she applied to. She stopped then. I didn't speak to my mother for a year until she apologized. I no longer go to any family function if that cousin is invited. My father doesn't say it aloud, but he thanked me for doing what needed to be done to stop this from continuing. I was out at a bar with a bunch of college friends on Halloween. We had a DD, so the rest of us were having a pretty good time. My roommate and I would always give each other a pretty hard time, but we were still good friends. She kept playfully slapping me. It really wasn't that hard, but I kept telling her to stop and she didn't. Finally I told her, if you do it again, I'm going to slap you. For real. She did. I hauled back and slapped her one. Hard. Everyone was stunned, but our sober friend was like, man, you had it coming. She warned you. It still amuses me. The girl I slapped wasn't even mad, but it did stop her from her foolishness. So, I guess it worked out. Once met this dude on a business travel. I had major housing problems, no friends, crappy work, you guys know the drill. We met in bar, drank and talked. After we paid, I asked if I could stay at his house for like a night. In exchange, he wanted me to slap him as hard as I could. I did. I met him at a very strange time in my life. For Redditors who do not understand, General Westmoreland was in charge of US forces in Vietnam up to the Tet Offensive in 1968. He was the worst general ever. He used the counterinsurgency tactics of bomb the crap out of things and rush in and kill. People were urging for classical counterinsurgency of patrolling in villages, helping people, who will in turn be willing to help you weed out the actual insurgents. When Westmoreland was removed from command, classical counterinsurgency was tried out with small groups of Marines who lived in the villages with the people. Classical counterinsurgency basically calls for soldiers to be human, be nice and live with the people to gain their trust. The Iraqi war mirrors Vietnam, because history tends to like to repeat itself. Up to the 2008 Iraqi surge, the US counterinsurgency was to create gigantic FOBs, forward operating bases, and roll out in Humvees once a day, and leave. To Iraqis we were the ominous buttholes of the world, as Reddit imagines. After General Petraeus took over, classical counterinsurgency was put in effect, and things got better. Back to Vietnam. The 8th Henry's father was very likely one of those Marines who were trying out new classical counterinsurgency tactics, which worked out and was eventually used throughout the rest of the conflict. To those who berate veterans of Vietnam, you do know there was a freaking draft, right? How would you feel if you were forced into service, you come out, and people publicly shame you for the rest of your life, regardless of your guilt, remorse, or incredible feelings of loss felt? I say shame on you for blaming the grunts, and not the politicians. I've been slapped several times, all by women. The most notable, at least my favorite, was freshman year of college. I was walking back from some house parties with my group of friends, all the while calling one of my girlfriends Yoko, as in Yoko Ono, but for no reason. I kept yelling that she was breaking up the band, and she got really pissed and slapped me, sobered me right up, and we didn't speak for the next day. I still don't know why I insisted she was Yoko. She isn't Japanese. We aren't in a band. No real reason. A good friend of mine and I were at her friend's house for a mini party, all guys in the engineering program. They decided to teach her how to play Halo. One asked her if she knew what teabagging was. She said no. Then one exclaimed, "I'll demonstrate," then stood up and began to walk over to her as though he would do it right then and there. I was livid and slapped him. My friend was confused until I explained what it was. Then she slapped him too. I've worked as a bouncer at a supbra kinda bar and a local concert venue. I prefer the slap. You punch a guy, there's a slight chance you going to hurt your hand. Slap a dude, and it just stings a little. Plus there is nothing funnier than the look in an already angry guy's face when you slap him and yell no like he's a bad dog. When I was in high school, a guy who was interested in my girlfriend at the time grabbed her hand and smacked his own butt with it. She was upset about it at the time and told me as soon as it happened. I went up to the kid and asked him why. He said it was just a joke. I then slapped him across his face with the force of 1,000 suns and replied, "Well, it wasn't freaking funny." True story. Slapping and threatening to kick a lady? What a bee. I wouldn't have offended your dad, but if someone slapped me like that I would beat the living crap out of them. I walked in on an ex-BF cheating on me. I just walked right up to him and slapped him hard across the face. He looked at me like I betrayed him and started crying. We worked it out, but our relationship was never the same. Slapped another ex who had cheated on me, but I didn't walk in on it. Then he hit me right back. So I hit him again and called my dad. Then the guy pulled a knife on my dad. Then my dad kicked his butt. That was, hands down, the trashiest relationship I've ever been in. Was in a bar and a tall dude was hitting on one of my friends. In my drunken stupor I believed that she wasn't having it and accosted the man in her defense. I threw a play slap at him, and he replied with "That's all you got," so I slapped this stranger with every ounce of my drunken being. No repercussions. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.